The stage coach lurched to a halt in front of the Ukiah saloon, and Sarah Lancaster stepped down into the dusty California street with nothing but a carpetbag and a reputation that had traveled faster than any horse could run. It was 1878, and the summer heat pressed down on the small Northern California town like a heavy hand. Sarah kept her eyes down as she walked toward the boarding house, feeling the weight of stairs from every porch and window. She had hoped distance would give her a fresh start, but the letter from her cousin had arrived 2 days before she did, explaining everything to the boarding house owner, who had no doubt shared the news with half the town by now. Sarah Lancaster was a fallen woman. She had loved the wrong man, believed his promises of marriage, and given him everything only to discover he already had a wife back east. The baby she had carried for 7 months had come too early and never drew breath, leaving her hollow and broken in more ways than one. The boarding house keeper, Mrs. Henley, answered the door with pursed lips and suspicious eyes. "Miss Lancaster, I presume?" "Yes, madam, I have the money for the first week." Mrs. Henley stepped aside but did not offer a welcoming smile. "The room is upstairs, second door on the left. Meals are at 7 in the morning and 6 in the evening. No gentlemen callers, no drinking, no loud noises after 8 o'clock." "Thank you, madam." Sarah climbed the narrow stairs, feeling every step like a journey up a mountain. The room was small and sparse, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the main street. She set down her bag and sat on the edge of the bed, fighting back tears that wanted to fall but would not come. She had cried herself dry somewhere between Sacramento and here. The next morning, Sarah went looking for work. She had been a seamstress back in San Francisco, and her fingers were skilled with needle and thread. But when she entered the dress shop on Main Street, the owner took one look at her and shook her head. "I heard about you, Miss Lancaster. I run a respectable establishment, and I cannot have someone like you working here. It would drive away my customers." Sarah felt her face burn with shame, but she held her head up. "I understand. Thank you for your time." She tried the general store next, then the hotel, then the laundry. Every door closed in her face with the same cold rejection. By afternoon, she was exhausted and hungry, her small savings dwindling with each day she could not find work. She sat on a bench outside the post office, watching the town move around her as if she were invisible. That was when she first saw him. He rode into town on a paint horse, sitting tall in the saddle with the easy confidence of a man who knew his place in the world. He wore a dusty brown hat, a dark blue shirt, and leather chaps that showed years of hard use. His face was sun-weathered and strong, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite and eyes that were a striking shade of green, even from a distance. He dismounted in front of the general store and tied his horse to the hitching post with practiced efficiency. Sarah watched as he went inside, then emerged a few minutes later with a sack of supplies. He was loading them into his saddlebags when a little boy came running down the street, chasing a hoop that was rolling out of control. The boy was not watching where he was going, and he ran straight into a wagon wheel, falling hard onto the dirt. The cowboy was there in an instant, kneeling beside the boy and helping him up. Sarah could not hear what he was saying, but his manner was gentle, and he brushed the dust from the boy's clothes before checking him for injuries. When he was satisfied the boy was unhurt, he retrieved the hoop and handed it back with what looked like a kind word and a warm smile. Sarah found herself staring longer than she should have. There was something about the way he moved, the way he cared for a child who was nothing to him, that made her chest ache with a longing she thought she had buried with her dreams. He mounted his horse and rode off in the direction of the hills, and Sarah forced herself to look away. Men like that did not want anything to do with women like her. Days passed in a blur of rejection and hunger. Sarah took to sitting by the creek at the edge of town, where she could be alone with her thoughts and away from the judgmental stares. She had enough money for another week at the boarding house, maybe 2 if she skipped meals, but after that she did not know what she would do. It was on one of these afternoons that she saw the cowboy again. He was watering his horse at the creek, his hat pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair that was slightly too long and curled at the ends. He had not noticed her sitting beneath the willow tree, and she was content to remain unseen, but his horse had other ideas. The paint mare lifted her head and looked directly at Sarah, then nickered softly. The cowboy turned, his green eyes finding her instantly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah felt her cheeks flush under his gaze, and she started to rise, ready to leave before he could say something cruel or dismissive. "No need to go on my account," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "There is plenty of creek for both of us." Sarah hesitated, then sat back down. "I did not mean to intrude." "You are not intruding. This water belongs to everyone." He led his horse closer, then sat down on a rock a respectful distance away. "Name is Austin Crawford. I have a ranch about 5 miles north of here." "Sarah Lancaster," she said quietly, waiting for recognition to dawn in his eyes, for his expression to change from friendly to cold, but he just nodded. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Lancaster. You are new to Ukiah?" "Yes, I arrived last week." "How are you finding it?" Sarah looked down at her hands. "It has been difficult." Austin was quiet for a moment, and she could feel him studying her. Towns like this can be hard on newcomers. Folks get set in their ways, think they know everything about a person before they even meet them. Something in his tone made her look up. He was watching her with an expression that was not pity exactly, but understanding, as if he knew what it was like to be judged unfairly. "You speak as if you have experience with that," Sarah said carefully. A shadow crossed his face. "My father was a drunk who gambled away everything we had and died in a barroom fight when I was 15. My mother worked herself to death trying to keep us fed. For years, people looked at me and saw nothing but his son, figured I would turn out the same way. Took a long time to prove them wrong." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. "How did you do it?" "By being myself, not what they expected. By working harder than anyone else and keeping my word. By not giving up even when it felt like the whole world was against me." He met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "And by finding people who were willing to see me for who I was, not who my father had been." "That sounds like a difficult path." It was, but it was worth it. He stood up and dusted off his pants. "If you need work, Miss Lancaster, I could use some help at the ranch. My housekeeper quit last month to go live with her daughter in Sacramento, and the place is falling apart without her. I am no good with cooking or mending or keeping things organized. It would be honest work, decent pay, and a place to stay if you need it." Sarah stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You are offering me a job just like that, just like that. You do not even know me, you do not know anything about me." Austin settled his hat back on his head and gave her a look that was both serious and kind. "I know you are sitting by a creek in the middle of the afternoon when you should be working, which tells me you cannot find a job. I know you jumped like a frightened rabbit when I spoke to you, which tells me you have been treated poorly. And I know you have sad eyes, but you hold your head up anyway, which tells me you have courage. That is all I need to know." Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, the first she had felt in days. "Mr. Crawford, I need to be honest with you. There are things about my past that people in this town have judged me for. If you hire me, it might reflect badly on you." He was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah was certain he was about to rescind the offer. But then he said, "Miss Lancaster, I learned a long time ago that the past is just that, past. What matters is who you are right now and who you want to be tomorrow. Whatever people say about you, it does not change the fact that I need a housekeeper and you need work. If that sounds fair to you, then the job is yours." Sarah stood on shaking legs, hardly daring to believe what was happening. "When would you want me to start? How about tomorrow morning?" "I will come by the boarding house at 7 with the wagon. You can bring whatever you have." "Thank you, Mr. Crawford. You have no idea what this means to me." He tipped his hat. "Call me Austin, and I think I have some idea." He climbed back into the saddle and rode off, leaving Sarah standing by the creek with something she had not felt in a very long time: hope. That night, Mrs. Henley made her disapproval clear when Sarah informed her she would be leaving. Working at a bachelor's ranch, living there. "Miss Lancaster, you are going from bad to worse. What little reputation you have left will be completely destroyed." I need the work, Mrs. Henley. I have no choice. There is always a choice. You could go back to wherever you came from. There is nothing for me there. Sarah paid what she owed and went upstairs to pack her few belongings. She did not have much, which made the task quick. As she folded her spare dress, she allowed herself to think about Austin Crawford and the kindness in his green eyes. She warned herself not to hope for anything beyond employment. He was being charitable, nothing more. Men like him did not fall in love with women like her. But still, as she lay in bed that night, she found herself thinking about the way he had spoken to her, as if she were a person of worth rather than a shameful mistake. It had been so long since anyone had treated her with simple human decency that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. Austin arrived promptly at 7 the next morning with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses. He helped Sarah load her carpet bag, then assisted her onto the seat beside him. As they drove through town, Sarah felt eyes watching them from every window, heard the whispers starting already. But Austin seemed oblivious or unconcerned, keeping his attention on the road ahead. The ranch was beautiful. It sat in a valley surrounded by rolling hills covered in golden grass and scattered oak trees. The house was a simple but well-built structure of wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. There was a barn, a chicken coop, a vegetable garden that had gone to seed, and several corrals where horses grazed peacefully. "It is not fancy, but it is home," Austin said as he helped her down from the wagon. "The housekeeper's quarters are attached to the main house but have a separate entrance. You will have your own room and privacy." He showed her through the house, which was indeed in need of a woman's touch. Dust covered every surface, dishes were piled in the kitchen, and laundry was heaped in corners. But the bones of the place were good, and Sarah could see the potential. "I know it is a mess," Austin said, looking somewhat embarrassed. "I have been focused on the horses and let everything else go." "It is nothing that cannot be fixed with some work," Sarah assured him. "What exactly would you like me to do? Cooking, cleaning, mending, washing, managing the household, basically. I have 3 ranch hands who come during the day and they will expect a hot meal at noon. I can help with the heavy work and I will pay you $30 a month plus room and board." It was more than fair, more than generous, really. Sarah nodded. "I will do my best to make this place feel like a proper home again." "I am sure you will." He showed her to her room, which was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the valley. "Take today to settle in and get your bearings. Tomorrow will be soon enough to start." But Sarah could not sit idle. As soon as Austin left to work with the horses, she tied back her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. She started with the kitchen, heating water and scrubbing dishes until they gleamed. She swept and dusted, shook out rugs, and opened windows to let fresh air chase away the stale smell of bachelor neglect. By the time Austin came in for supper, the house was transformed. The table was set with clean plates, and a simple but hearty meal of beans, cornbread, and fried salt pork was waiting. He stopped in the doorway and stared. "You did all this today?" "I wanted to earn my keep," Sarah said, suddenly nervous that she had overstepped. "If I did anything wrong, I can fix it." "Wrong? Sarah, this is the cleanest this place has been in months. It smells good too. I had forgotten what that was like." He washed up at the basin she had set out, then sat down at the table with visible relief. "This looks wonderful." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Austin spoke again. "You do not have to tell me if you do not want to, but I get the feeling something bad happened to you, something that made you come here." Sarah set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. She had known this conversation would come eventually, but she had hoped to put it off a little longer. Still, Austin had been honest with her. He deserved the same. "There was a man," she began slowly. "In San Francisco, he was charming and kind, and he told me he loved me. He said we would be married as soon as he settled some business affairs. I believed him, I trusted him, and I gave him everything." Austin's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just waited for her to continue. "I found out I was expecting a child, and when I told him, he disappeared. I went to his address and discovered he had a wife and 2 children. Everything he had told me was a lie." Sarah's voice cracked, but she forced herself to go on. I lost the baby at 7 months, a little girl. She never even took a breath." "Sarah," Austin said softly, and there was such compassion in his voice that it nearly broke her. "Everyone knew. Everyone talked. I could not find work. I could not show my face without seeing disgust or pity. My own family turned me away, so I came here, hoping for a fresh start. But the story followed me anyway." Austin reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, and the simple human contact made tears finally spill down Sarah's cheeks. "That man was a liar and a coward," Austin said firmly. "What he did to you was wrong. But it does not define you. You are not what happened to you. You are how you responded to it. You are the courage it took to leave everything behind and start over. You are the strength it took to sit by that creek and not give up even when the whole world seemed against you." "How can you say that? You barely know me." "I know enough." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I want you to hear this, Sarah Lancaster, really hear it. I do not care what anyone says about your past, I only see your future, and from where I am sitting, it looks pretty bright." Sarah could not speak. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked past the scandal and the shame to see her, just her, as a person worthy of respect and kindness. She cried then, really cried for the first time since losing her daughter, and Austin sat with her and did not let go of her hand until the tears finally stopped. Over the following weeks, Sarah settled into a rhythm at the ranch. She rose early to make breakfast, packed lunches for Austin and the ranch hands, spent her days cleaning and mending and tending the garden she had begun to revive. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in over a year she felt useful again. Austin was an easy man to work for. He was up before dawn and often did not come back to the house until after dark, but he was never demanding or unkind. He thanked her for every meal, complimented her improvements to the house, and treated her with a respect that still surprised her. The ranch hands, 3 older men named Pete, Tom, and Jim, were more reserved at first, but they warmed to her when they realized she could cook better than any of them and did not mind their rough manners. But it was the evenings Sarah treasured most. After supper, Austin would often linger at the table, and they would talk. He told her about his dream of building the best horse ranch in Northern California, about the years of backbreaking work it had taken to get the land and start the herd. She told him about growing up in a small town, about learning to sew from her grandmother, about the books she loved to read when she could find them. One evening, about a month after Sarah had arrived, Austin came in with a package wrapped in brown paper. "I was in town today and saw this in the general store window," he said, looking almost shy as he handed it to her. "Thought you might like it." Sarah unwrapped the package to find a book, a beautiful leather-bound copy of Jane Eyre. She stared at it in disbelief. "Austin, this must have cost a fortune." "Not a fortune, and you mentioned once that you had never finished it. Seemed like something that needed fixing." Sarah ran her fingers over the cover, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Thank you. This is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time. You deserve kind things, Sarah. I wish you could see that." She looked up at him, and something in his expression made her heart skip. There was a warmth in his eyes that went beyond friendliness, an intensity that made her pulse quicken. For a moment she thought he might say something more, but then he cleared his throat and stood up. "I should let you get some rest. Morning comes early." Sarah watched him go, hugging the book to her chest and feeling something dangerous bloom in her heart. She was falling in love with Austin Crawford, and she had no idea what to do about it. The next Sunday, Austin asked if she would like to accompany him to church. Sarah hesitated, remembering the cold reception she had received in town, but Austin's steady presence beside her gave her courage. They rode in together, and Sarah felt the stairs as they entered the small white building. Whispers followed them down the aisle. They sat near the back, and Sarah tried to focus on the sermon, but she was acutely aware of the women turning to look at her, of the men's disapproving frowns. When the service ended, a woman approached them as they were leaving. She was middle-aged and well-dressed, with a pinched face and calculating eyes. "Mr. Crawford, I hope you know what you are doing, bringing that woman to church. Some of us have standards to uphold in this community." Austin's expression went cold in a way Sarah had never seen before. Mrs. Peterson, I suggest you focus on the sermon we just heard about not casting stones. Sarah is a member of my household and she has every right to be here. She is living under your roof, unmarried. That alone is scandalous. She is my employee and my household arrangements are none of your concern. Now if you will excuse us, we have a long ride home. He took Sarah's arm and guided her out of the church, his jaw tight with anger. They were almost to the wagon when a man stepped in front of them. He was young, maybe 25, with slicked back hair and an expensive suit that looked out of place in the rustic town. Sarah Lancaster, he said, and his smile was cruel. I heard you were hiding out here, running from your shame in San Francisco. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She knew this man. Thomas Wheeler, a friend of the man who had ruined her life. He had been one of the people who spread the story far and wide, taking pleasure in her humiliation. Leave her alone, Wheeler, Austin said, his voice dangerously quiet. Why, she is fair game now. Everyone knows what she is, a whore who got caught. Austin moved so fast Sarah barely saw it happen. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had Wheeler by the collar and had slammed him against the church wall. You will apologize to Miss Lancaster right now, or I will break your nose. You cannot threaten me. Everyone here knows what she did. I do not care what she did or did not do. You will treat her with respect, or you will answer to me. The crowd that had gathered was silent, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Sarah touched Austin's arm. Please, let us just go. He is not worth it. Austin held Wheeler for another moment, then released him with a shove that sent the younger man stumbling. Stay away from her. Stay away from my ranch. If I see you anywhere near Sarah again, I will not be so gentle. They rode home in tense silence. Sarah felt sick with shame and anger, not at Austin but at herself for bringing this trouble to his doorstep. When they reached the ranch, she climbed down from the wagon without waiting for his help. I am sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I should never have come with you. I should never have come here at all. I am ruining your reputation. Sarah, stop. No, Mrs. Peterson was right. People are talking about you now because of me. That man said terrible things and you had to defend me. This is not fair to you. Austin caught her shoulders and turned her to face him. Listen to me. I do not care what Thomas Wheeler says. I do not care what Mrs. Peterson thinks. And I do not care if the whole town talks about me from now until doomsday. You are not ruining anything. How can you say that? You heard what he called me. I heard a bitter, small man trying to feel important by tearing down someone who is 10 times the person he will ever be. You made a mistake. You trusted someone who did not deserve it. That does not make you a whore. It makes you human. Why are you doing this? Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. Why do you care so much about defending me? Austin was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes searching her face. Then he said very quietly, because I am in love with you. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. What? I am in love with you, Sarah. I have been since the day you sat by the creek and looked at me like you expected me to hurt you, but you were going to face it with courage anyway. I love the way you brought life back to this house. I love the way you smile when you do not think anyone is watching. I love your strength and your kindness and the fact that you keep going even when everything is stacked against you. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. I know I have no right to say this. I know you have been hurt and you probably do not want to hear it. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel the way I feel. Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. Austin, you cannot love me. I am damaged. I am tainted. I would only bring you trouble. You are not damaged. You are not tainted. You are beautiful and brave and good, and I do not want to hear you say otherwise. His thumb brushed away her tears. I am not asking you to love me back. I am not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know that when I look at you, I do not see your past. I only see your future. And I hope if you will let me, I can be part of it. Sarah felt something break open inside her, all the walls she had built around her heart crumbling in an instant. I am afraid, she whispered. I am afraid to believe this is real. I am afraid you will wake up one day and realize what a mistake you made. That will never happen. I promise you, Sarah, I am not going anywhere. She looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and love, and something in her chose to take the leap. "I think I might be in love with you too," she said softly. "I have been trying not to be, trying to tell myself it was impossible, but I cannot help it. You make me feel safe. You make me feel seen. You make me feel like maybe I deserve a second chance. You deserve all the chances in the world." Austin leaned down and kissed her, and it was nothing like the frantic, desperate kisses she had shared with the man who betrayed her. This was gentle and reverent, full of promise and hope. Sarah melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back with all the love and gratitude and joy that was flooding through her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Sarah. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday soon. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life showing you how loved you are." "Yes," Sarah said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." The next few weeks passed in a haze of happiness. Austin courted Sarah properly, bringing her wildflowers from the hills, reading to her in the evenings, stealing kisses when the ranch hands were not looking. They decided to wait a few months before marrying, wanting to give Sarah time to feel secure in their relationship and to let the town gossip die down a bit. But not everyone was happy about their engagement. Mrs. Peterson and her circle of friends made their disapproval known, loudly and often. They stopped speaking to Austin when they saw him in town, and more than once Sarah overheard cruel comments when she went to the general store. Thomas Wheeler, it turned out, had been courting a local girl whose father was an influential banker, and he used his position to spread more vicious rumors about Sarah. Austin weathered it all with quiet dignity, but Sarah could see it was taking a toll. He lost a contract to sell horses to the bank because the banker's wife refused to do business with him. Several families stopped inviting him to social events. Pete, Tom, and Jim remained loyal, but even they reported hearing ugly talk in town. One evening, Sarah found Austin sitting on the porch staring out at the darkening hills with a troubled expression. She sat beside him and took his hand. "You are having second thoughts," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, never," he squeezed her hand, "but I am worried about you. This is harder than I thought it would be. People can be so cruel, I know. But I also know that I would rather face their cruelty with you than hide from it alone. We will get through this together." Austin pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "You are the strongest person I know. I learned from the best." They sat together in the gathering darkness, and Sarah felt a fierce determination settle over her. She would not let the narrow-minded people of this town destroy what she and Austin had built. She would not let them make her ashamed of loving and being loved. But the trouble was far from over. A week later, Sarah was in town buying supplies when she encountered a group of women outside the church. Mrs. Peterson was among them, and she made no effort to lower her voice as Sarah approached. "It is disgraceful, that is what it is." Austin Crawford was a respectable man before that woman sank her claws into him. Now look at him, throwing away his reputation for a common trollop. Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but she held her head high and kept walking. But Mrs. Peterson was not finished. "You know, Miss Lancaster, if you had any decency, you would leave town. You have done enough damage to that poor man." Sarah stopped and turned to face her. "Mr. Crawford is a grown man capable of making his own decisions. If you have a problem with his choices, perhaps you should take it up with him instead of gossiping like a schoolgirl." Mrs. Peterson's face went red. "How dare you speak to me that way? You have no right, no standing in this community. I have every right to defend myself and the man I love. You do not know anything about me or what I have been through. You have decided I am unworthy based on gossip and rumors without ever bothering to learn the truth. That says far more about you than it does about me. The truth is that you are a fallen woman who has ensnared a good man. The truth is that I made a mistake and paid dearly for it. The truth is that I have worked hard to rebuild my life. And the truth is that Austin loves me, not despite my past, but because of who I am now. If that makes you uncomfortable, that is your problem, not mine." Sarah turned and walked away, her hands shaking but her head held high. Behind her, she heard shocked murmurs and whispered exclamations. She knew she had probably made things worse, but she could not bring herself to care. She was tired of being meek. She was tired of accepting other people's judgment as if it were deserved. When she got back to the ranch and told Austin what had happened, he laughed out loud. "You said that to Mrs. Peterson? I wish I could have seen her face. You are not angry, Sarah, I am proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You did not let them make you feel small. That took courage. I am just tired of hiding, tired of being ashamed. I love you and I am not going to apologize for it. Good, because I love you too and I am done caring what anyone else thinks." They set a date for the wedding, the first Saturday in October, just 6 weeks away. It would be a small ceremony at the ranch with just Pete, Tom, Jim, and a few of Austin's friends from neighboring ranches. Sarah made her own dress, a simple but beautiful gown of cream-colored silk that she had been saving for years. Austin bought a new suit and had his boots polished until they gleamed. As the day approached, Sarah found herself growing more excited and less afraid. This was really happening. She was going to marry Austin Crawford, the kindest, strongest, most loving man she had ever known. Her past would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. She was ready to step into her future, but 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. Sarah was in town one afternoon when she heard shouting from the direction of the saloon. She hurried toward the noise and found a crowd gathered outside. Pushing through, she saw Austin standing in the street facing Thomas Wheeler, who was drunk and belligerent. "You think you are better than everyone else," Wheeler was shouting. "You think you can parade that whore around town and expect us all to bow down." "Wheeler, go sleep it off," Austin said calmly. "You do not want to do this. I want to teach you a lesson. You need to learn what happens when you disrespect decent people." Wheeler reached for his gun and Sarah's heart stopped, but Austin was faster. He drew and fired in one smooth motion, and Wheeler's gun went spinning from his hand before he could aim. The shot echoed through the street and Wheeler stood frozen, staring at his bleeding hand in shock. "I could have killed you," Austin said, his voice hard. "I chose not to. If you ever threaten me or Sarah again, I will not be so merciful. Now get out of my sight." Wheeler stumbled away, cradling his injured hand and muttering curses. The crowd slowly dispersed and Austin holstered his gun with shaking hands. Sarah ran to him and threw her arms around him. "Are you all right?" "I am fine. I am sorry you had to see that. I am just glad you are safe." She pulled back to look at him. "You could have been killed." "I was not going to let him hurt you or ruin what we have. I meant what I said, Sarah. Nothing is going to keep me from marrying you." But the sheriff, a graying man named Bill Thornton, approached them with a serious expression. "Austin, I am going to have to ask you to come with me. Wheeler is pressing charges for assault." He drew first. "Half the town saw it." "I know, but he is claiming you provoked him and his future father-in-law has influence. I do not have a choice." Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. "This is not fair." Austin was defending himself. "I know, Miss Lancaster, and I will make sure that is clear when we sort this out, but right now I need Austin to come with me." Austin touched Sarah's cheek. "It will be all right. Go back to the ranch and wait for me. I will be home by tonight." But he was not home by nightfall, and he was not home the next day either. Sarah learned from Pete that the banker had convinced the judge to hold Austin for trial, claiming he was a danger to the community. The trial was set for the following week, just 3 days before the wedding. Sarah spent the days in a state of constant anxiety. She could not eat, could not sleep, could only pace the house and worry. What if Austin was convicted? What if he was sent to prison? What if she lost him just when she had finally found happiness? On the day of the trial, Sarah dressed in her best dress and went into town with Pete, Tom, and Jim. The courthouse was packed, with half the town turned out to see what would happen. Sarah found a seat in the front row, her hands clenched in her lap as Austin was led in by the sheriff. Their eyes met across the room and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. Sarah tried to smile back, but her face felt frozen. The trial was a nightmare. Wheeler's lawyer painted Austin as a violent hothead who had attacked an innocent man. Several of Mrs. Peterson's friends testified that Austin had become unstable since taking up with Sarah, that he was no longer the respectable rancher they had known. The banker testified that Austin was a menace to the community and should be locked up. But then the defense began. Pete, Tom, and Jim all testified to Austin's good character, his hard work, his fairness as an employer. Several of Austin's rancher friends spoke up, saying he was one of the most honest men they knew, and then Sarah took the stand. "Miss Lancaster," the defense lawyer said, "can you tell us what happened on the day in question?" Sarah took a deep breath and began to speak. She described Wheeler's drunken aggression, his threats, the way he had reached for his gun. She talked about how Austin had tried to defuse the situation peacefully and had only drawn his weapon when Wheeler forced his hand. She spoke clearly and firmly, never wavering even when Wheeler's lawyer tried to rattle her with questions about her past. "Is it not true, Miss Lancaster, that you came to Ukiah in disgrace? That you have been living with Mr. Crawford without benefit of marriage?" "I came to Ukiah looking for a fresh start, yes, and I work for Mr. Crawford as his housekeeper. We are engaged to be married in 3 days if this trial does not prevent it. Is it not also true that you have influenced Mr. Crawford negatively, causing him to become estranged from respectable members of the community?" "I have done no such thing. Austin Crawford is his own man. He treats me with respect and kindness, which is more than I can say for many people in this town. If his willingness to look past my mistakes and see my worth as a human being makes him less respectable in your eyes, then I would say your definition of respectability needs examining." There were murmurs in the courtroom and the judge banged his gavel. "That will do, Miss Lancaster. You may step down." The jury deliberated for 2 hours, which felt like 2 years to Sarah. She sat in the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly with Austin's across the aisle, praying harder than she had ever prayed in her life. Finally, the jury returned. The foreman stood and cleared his throat. "We find the defendant, Austin Crawford, not guilty of all charges." The courtroom erupted in noise, some people cheering and others shouting in protest. Sarah felt tears of relief streaming down her face as the sheriff unlocked Austin's handcuffs. He came straight to her and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "It is over," he whispered into her hair. "It is finally over." But as they left the courthouse, the banker blocked their path. "This is not over, Crawford. You may have won today, but you and that woman will never be accepted in this town. I will make sure of it." Austin looked at him with an expression of profound pity. "You know what? I do not care. Sarah and I do not need your acceptance. We have each other and we have people who genuinely care about us. That is all we need. You can keep your narrow-minded judgment. We will be just fine without it." He took Sarah's hand and they walked out of the courthouse together into the bright afternoon sun. Behind them, Pete, Tom, and Jim followed, and several of Austin's rancher friends clapped him on the back as they passed. Not everyone in Ukiah hated them, Sarah realized. There were good people here too, people who understood that everyone deserved a second chance. 3 days later, on a perfect October morning, Sarah Lancaster became Sarah Crawford. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, held on the porch of the ranch with wildflowers decorating the railings. Pete stood up for Austin and Sarah wore the cream silk dress she had made. When Austin said his vows, his voice was strong and clear. "Sarah, from the moment I met you, I knew you were special. You have taught me what real courage looks like, what real strength is. You have brought joy and laughter back into my life. I promise to honor you, to protect you, to love you with everything I have for as long as I live. Your past does not matter to me. I only see your future, and I am so grateful I get to be part of it." Sarah was crying too hard to speak at first, but she took a shaky breath and said her own vows. "Austin, you saved my life in more ways than one. You looked at me when everyone else looked away. You saw worth in me when I could not see it in myself. You made me believe in love again, in hope, in the possibility of happiness. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your love for all our days. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for loving me." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Austin kissed her with such tenderness and joy that Sarah felt her heart might burst. This was real. This was hers. This was the future she had stopped believing was possible. The celebration afterward was small but joyful. They had roasted a pig and made enough food to feed an army, and Austin's friends stayed late into the evening, playing music and dancing under the stars. When everyone finally left and Sarah and Austin were alone, he swept her up in his arms and carried her over the threshold of their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Crawford," he said, his eyes full of love. "I have been home since the day I met you," Sarah replied, kissing him deeply. That night they came together as husband and wife, and it was nothing like Sarah's previous experience. There was no shame, no fear, no sense of being used. There was only love and passion and the profound sense of belonging. Austin was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Sarah's head on Austin's chest as he stroked her hair. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "More than I ever thought possible, I love you too, and I am going to spend every day proving it." The months that followed were not without challenges. Some people in town continued to shun them, and Mrs. Peterson never stopped her gossip. But Sarah and Austin built a life together that was full of love and laughter. Sarah continued to manage the household, and she began taking in sewing work from some of the ranching families who did not share the town's prejudice. Austin's horse business thrived, and he hired 2 more ranch hands to help with the growing herd. In the spring, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, memories of her lost daughter flooding back, but Austin held her and promised that this time would be different. He took her to the best doctor in the county, a kind older man who assured her that she was healthy and strong and there was no reason to expect complications. As her belly grew, Sarah allowed herself to hope. Austin was endlessly attentive, making sure she did not work too hard, bringing her treats from town, talking to the baby every night before they went to sleep. He built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving their initials into the headboard. In November, on a chilly morning with frost on the ground, Sarah went into labor. The birth was long and painful, but when she finally heard the lusty cry of a baby, she wept with relief and joy. Austin was there the whole time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, and when the doctor placed their son in her arms, his face was wet with tears. "He is perfect," Austin breathed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Samuel after Austin's grandfather, and he was indeed perfect. He had Austin's green eyes and Sarah's dark hair, and from the beginning, he was a happy, healthy baby. Sarah marveled at him constantly, still hardly believing this was her life now. She was a wife, a mother, a woman with a future full of possibility. 2 years later, they had a daughter they named Emma, who was the spitting image of Sarah with a temperament as fierce as her father's. Austin doted on both children, and Sarah often found him sitting on the floor playing with them, his serious rancher's face softened with laughter. The town gradually accepted them, or at least stopped actively shunning them. Mrs. Peterson never became friendly, but she at least stopped spreading rumors. Thomas Wheeler left town after his engagement fell apart, and the banker retired, replaced by a younger man who did not care about old scandals. New families moved to Ukiah, people who knew nothing of Sarah's past and judged her only on the kind, capable woman she had become. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Austin took Sarah back to the creek where they had first met. It was a warm summer evening, and the water sparkled in the fading light. They sat on the same rock where Austin had offered her a job all those years ago, watching their children play in the shallows. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked suddenly. "Marrying me?" Dealing with all the trouble it caused, Austin looked at her in surprise. "Not for a single second. Why would you ask that?" "I just think about how much easier your life would have been if you had chosen someone else, someone without my history." "Sarah," he took her hands in his. "My life would not have been easier, it would have been emptier. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children are my whole world. Whatever trouble we faced was worth it 1,000 times over." Sarah leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "You know, when I first came to Ukiah, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be happy again, never be loved again. I was so lost. And now I am found, because you saw me when I could not see myself, because you only saw my future when everyone else only saw my past." She turned to look at him, this man who had given her everything. "You saved me, Austin." "No," he said softly, kissing her forehead. "We saved each other." They sat together by the creek as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, while their children laughed and played nearby. Sarah thought about the long journey that had brought her here, all the pain and shame and fear. She thought about the woman she had been, broken and desperate, believing she deserved nothing better than judgment and scorn. And she thought about the woman she had become, loved and cherished and valued. A wife, a mother, a full partner in building a life and a legacy. She had learned that the past did not have to define the future, that mistakes did not have to be permanent, that love could heal even the deepest wounds. Years continued to pass in a steady rhythm of seasons and growth. Samuel grew into a tall, serious boy with his father's sense of responsibility and his mother's compassion. Emma was wild and free-spirited, more comfortable on horseback than in a drawing room, and both Austin and Sarah adored her fearlessness. When Samuel was 10 and Emma was 8, Sarah gave birth to twin boys, Jacob and William, who kept the whole household in a constant state of controlled chaos. The ranch prospered beyond Austin's wildest dreams. His horses became known throughout California for their quality and temperament, and buyers came from as far as San Francisco to purchase them. He was able to hire more hands and expand the property, building a new barn and additional corrals. Sarah managed it all with quiet efficiency, keeping the books, feeding the workers, and somehow finding time to help her children with their lessons and sew clothes for half the county. On Samuel's 12th birthday, Austin gave him his first real responsibility, training a young colt. Sarah watched from the porch as father and son worked together in the corral, Austin's patient voice instructing, Samuel's face intense with concentration. It was a perfect mirror of the day Austin had first shown her kindness, and Sarah felt her heart swell with gratitude for the beautiful life they had built. That evening, after the children were in bed, Sarah and Austin sat on the porch swing, rocking gently in the warm night air. The hills were dark against a sky full of stars, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "You remember the first time you brought me here?" Sarah asked, her head on Austin's shoulder. "Of course. You looked terrified but determined not to show it. I wanted to make everything all right for you, but I did not know if you would let me. I did not think I deserved for anything to be all right. I thought I was meant to suffer for what I had done." Austin's arm tightened around her. "You never deserved to suffer. You deserved exactly what you have now: love, family, respect, happiness. I know that now, but it took you showing me before I could believe it." She looked up at him, this man who had changed her entire world. "You gave me everything, Austin, a home, a name, beautiful children, a life I love. But more than that, you gave me back myself. You made me believe I was worthy of good things. You were always worthy, I just helped you see it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds and watching the stars wheel overhead. Sarah thought about all the women who might be out there somewhere, broken and hurting the way she had been, believing they were beyond redemption. She wished she could tell them what she had learned, that the past was not a prison, that mistakes did not have to be forever, that there were still people in the world who would see your worth when you could not see it yourself. "What are you thinking about?" Austin asked softly. "About second chances, about how lucky I am, about how much I love you. I am the lucky one. You made my house a home, you gave me a family, you made me a better man." "We made each other better," Sarah said, echoing his words from years ago. "That is what love does." Emma came running out onto the porch, her nightgown flying behind her. "Mama, Jacob and William are fighting again, and Samuel told me to come get you." Sarah stood with a sigh, but she was smiling. "No rest for the weary. Come on, let us go separate your brothers before they destroy something." As she went inside to deal with the twins, Austin called after her, "I love you, Sarah Crawford." She turned and blew him a kiss. "I love you too, always." The years turned into decades. Samuel grew up and took over much of the ranch work, eventually marrying a sweet-natured girl from a neighboring ranch. Emma shocked everyone by becoming a veterinarian, studying with the county's only other female doctor and earning a reputation for her skill with difficult animals. The twins went into business together, opening a feed store in Ukiah that quickly became successful. Through it all, Sarah and Austin remained each other's greatest love and strongest support. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, economic downturns and personal losses. When Austin's best friend Pete died of pneumonia, Sarah held him while he grieved. When Sarah's cousin, the one who had first told Ukiah about her past, wrote asking for forgiveness, Austin encouraged her to extend it, and the two women eventually reconciled. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were grandchildren now, 4 of them, with another on the way. The house Sarah had once cleaned in desperate solitude was full of noise and laughter and life. During the party, Samuel raised his glass for a toast. To my parents, who taught me what real love looks like. To my father, who showed me that strength comes from gentleness and wisdom comes from listening. And to my mother, who proved that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to keep going despite it. You built something incredible here, not just this ranch but this family. We love you both. There was not a dry eye in the house as everyone echoed the toast. Sarah looked around at all these people, her children and their spouses, her grandchildren playing in the corner. Austin beside her with his hair now streaked with silver, but his eyes still that same striking green. This was her legacy, not the mistakes of her youth but this. A family built on love and forgiveness and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Sarah and Austin walked out to the creek one more time. It had become a tradition over the years, returning to the place where their story began. The moon was full, turning the water to silver, and the air smelled of oak trees and wildflowers. 25 years, Austin said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. I vote for always, Sarah said, taking his hand. I cannot even remember what my life was like before you. It was lonely for both of us, and now it is full. Too full sometimes when all 4 children and their families are here at once. Austin laughed. I would not have it any other way. They stood by the water, hand in hand, and Sarah thought about that desperate young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpetbag and a broken heart. She thought about the kindness of a cowboy who had seen past her mistakes to the person she could become. She thought about every challenge they had faced and overcome together, every joy they had shared, every moment of grace. Do you know what the best part is? Sarah asked. Of everything we have built together. What is that? We proved them all wrong, Mrs. Peterson and Thomas Wheeler and everyone who said I would ruin you, that we would never last, that my past would destroy our future. We proved that love is stronger than judgment, that forgiveness is more powerful than shame, that who you are now matters more than who you were before. Austin turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Sarah, you did not prove them wrong, you proved yourself right. You always believed deep down that you deserved better than what life had given you. You just needed someone to remind you. Everything we have, everything we built, started with your courage to accept my help, to trust me, to take a chance on happiness again. I am so proud of you. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were good tears, happy tears, and I am grateful for you. For seeing my future when I could only see my past, for loving me when I could not love myself, for building this beautiful life with me. It was my privilege and my joy. They kissed under the moonlight, and even after 25 years of marriage, Sarah still felt that flutter in her stomach, that sense of coming home. She rested her head on Austin's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt completely, perfectly at peace. More years passed, bringing both sorrows and joys. Austin's health began to fail when he was in his 60s, and Sarah cared for him with the same devotion he had once shown her. Even when his body weakened, his spirit remained strong, and his love for Sarah never dimmed. They spent long afternoons on the porch, holding hands and watching their grandchildren play, content in each other's company. When Emma's daughter, a spirited girl named Rose, came to Sarah crying about a mistake she had made, Sarah held her close and told her the story of her own youth. She talked about the shame and the judgment, about feeling worthless and beyond redemption. And then she told her about Austin, about the kindness of a stranger who had looked past her mistakes and seen her worth. "We all make mistakes, Rose," Sarah said gently. "What matters is what we do after. Do we let the mistake define us, or do we learn from it and grow? Do we accept other people's judgment as truth, or do we fight to show them who we really are? You are not your worst moment. You are so much more than that." Rose cried in her grandmother's arms, and Sarah knew the girl would be all right. The lessons Sarah had learned, the grace she had received from Austin, would echo down through the generations, a gift that kept on giving. On a spring morning when Sarah was 72 and Austin was 75, he did not wake up. The doctor said it was his heart, worn out from years of hard living and harder work. Sarah sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand and memorizing his face, this man who had been her everything. The funeral was attended by what seemed like the entire county. Austin had touched so many lives with his kindness and fairness, and person after person came to Sarah to tell her what he had meant to them. Several of them mentioned how he had always seen the best in people, how he had given second chances to ranch hands who had made mistakes, how he had been willing to look past society's judgments to see the person underneath. "He was that way from the moment I met him," Sarah told them. "He saw my future when everyone else only saw my past. He saved my life in every way a person can be saved." After everyone left and the house was quiet, Sarah went to the creek alone. She sat on their rock and let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since Austin had died. She cried for the loss of her partner, her love, her best friend. She cried for all the years they had shared and all the years they would not. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she sat in the silence, listening to the water and remembering. She remembered the first time she saw him, tall and strong and kind. She remembered the day he offered her a job, the night he told her he loved her, the moment he kissed her at their wedding. She remembered the births of their children, the building of their life together, the thousand small moments of tenderness and joy that had made up their marriage, and she remembered his words. "I only see your future." Sarah smiled through her tears. Austin had been wrong about one thing. He had not just seen her future, he had become it. Every good thing in her life had grown from the seed of his kindness, his faith in her, his unwavering love. He had transformed her from a broken woman with no hope into someone strong and whole and loved. She stayed by the creek until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, just like it had on so many evenings when they had sat there together. Then she stood and walked back to the house, to her children and grandchildren who were waiting to comfort her. Sarah lived for another 15 years, surrounded by her family and the legacy she and Austin had built together. She taught her grandchildren to sew and cook, told them stories about the old days, and made sure they understood the importance of kindness and second chances. She was respected throughout the county, known for her wisdom and generosity. When she finally passed away in her sleep at the age of 87, she was buried beside Austin under the oak tree on the hill overlooking the ranch. The whole family gathered for the funeral. 3 generations of Crawfords come to pay their respects to the woman who had been the heart of their family. Samuel, now an old man himself, spoke at the service. "My mother taught me many things, but the most important was this: who you were yesterday does not have to define who you are today or who you will be tomorrow. She made mistakes when she was young, and the world tried to make her pay for them forever. But my father saw past those mistakes to the incredible woman she was, and together they built something beautiful. They showed all of us that love is stronger than judgment, that forgiveness is more powerful than condemnation, and that everyone deserves a chance to start over." As they lowered Sarah's casket into the ground beside Austin's, the sun broke through the clouds, sending shafts of golden light across the valley. And somewhere in the wind that rustled through the oak leaves, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear 2 voices laughing together, finally reunited after years apart. The ranch stayed in the Crawford family for generations, each one adding to the legacy that Sarah and Austin had started. The story of their love became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a reminder that the past does not have to be a prison and that true love sees not what was but what can be. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blows just right through the valley and the creek sparkles in the fading light, some say you can still feel their presence there. Two souls who found each other when the world said they should not, who built a love that lasted beyond a lifetime, who proved that the most powerful force in the world is not judgment but grace, not condemnation but compassion, not the past but the future. Sarah Lancaster Crawford's story began with shame and ended with triumph, began with judgment and ended with love, began with a woman who thought she had lost everything and ended with a woman who had gained the world. And at the heart of it all was a cowboy who looked at a broken woman and said, "I only see your future," and meant it with every fiber of his being. That was their legacy, passed down through the years, that everyone deserves to be seen for who they are becoming, not who they have been. That love is patient and kind and willing to look past mistakes, to see the person underneath. That the most heroic thing a person can do is offer grace to someone the world has condemned. The Crawford Ranch still stands, a testament to the power of second chances and the enduring strength of true love. And somewhere in the hills of Northern California, in a small town called Ukiah, the legend lives on of a woman who was judged for the mistakes of her past and a cowboy who said, "I only see your future," and together they proved that love can conquer all.